It's been a while, my fellow board game enthusiast. I'm sure that after all the mysteries of the previous campaign, you've been eager to get some answers. And that's just what I'm here to provide, with Wave 5 offering up a buffet of expanded world building and reveals. So let's begin with the most important reveal of all, Aeon, a small village far to the south of New Gravehold. What makes this village so important, you ask? Well, to answer that, we need a quick recap again. There once was the prosperous world that was. The apocalypse happened when Blight Lord attacked. All the survivors fled to the underground city of Gravehold. Yada yada yada. Right? Wrong. Turns out, not everyone who remained on the surface had perished. A small group of people had survived by hiding deep within a forest, and over the decades had developed a unique culture of their own. For example, they called breaches portals, and the Nameless that came through them portal-born. Eventually, these people founded the village of Aeon and trained mages of their own. Yet unlike the mages of Gravehold, the mages of Aeon used glyphs rather than breaches to channel their energy. To be clear, they could still use breach magic, they just preferred not to, as they discovered that tearing a breach into the void acted as a beacon for attracting the Nameless. Thus the village of Aeon implemented strict laws against its use in order to remain undetected. Now if you think about it, this discovery actually explains a lot. Back at episode 1, there was always this huge plot hole of why the Nameless didn't attack old Gravehold for decades after the apocalypse. I mean, the only surviving mage back then was Brahma. It would have been easy to wipe the city out, so why wait until an entire army of mages had been trained to defend the city instead? But it's the exact opposite. The Nameless never knew Gravehold existed, not until an army of mages practicing breach magic every day send out the biggest "Come at me, bro!" signal in existence, that is. I suspect that if no one in Gravehold ever began practicing magic, the city would have remained undetected to this day. Moving on, there is another big difference between the mages of Gravehold versus the mages of Aeon. Where Gravehold trained their young mages to survive on their own, those of Aeon were trained using a tether system, two mages bound together since childhood, doing everything together as partners. This also allowed one mage to purely focus on gathering energy, while the other used this focused power to cast powerful offensive spells. This makes for a nice segue to introduce our first pair of new characters, Kel and Ilya, two tethered mages of Aeon. Ilya was gentle-natured and saw beauty in all things, while Kel had a sour exterior hiding her kindness and care. These two were truly the best of partners in every sense of the word. But not all mages of Aeon are as lucky to find and keep a good partner at their sides. Lucian, for example, recently lost his tether when a Nameless attacked his partner while they were briefly apart. He now struggles to both maintain breaches and cast his magic, and usually can only do one at a time, as is evident by his gameplay mechanic where his breaches close each time he casts a spell through them. Another mage, Reth, had been tetherless since childhood. Due to this lack of a partner, the other mages of Aeon treated her with pity, a fact she despised. Yet Reth managed to channel this anger into a unique style of breach magic, using her own body as conduit for storing the energy as her tether would have. Though a reckless approach to take, none could argue that she always got results in a fight. And as her flavor text on the treasure card massacre helm would put it, the best defense is an unrelenting offense. Now you might be wondering how Reth ended up tetherless as a child. Turns out she did originally have a partner. A green-haired, pale-eyed boy with an interest in plants, who one day wandered off into the forest never to return. That's right, people, Enko's origins just got revealed, and turns out he foreshadowed the existence of the surface survivors all along. Another nice thing to note is that Reth's starter card, Fossilized Rose, was a memento given to her by Enko. Next, let's quickly discuss the relationship between Aeon and New Gravehold. As far as I can tell, the citizens of New Gravehold, save for a certain mysterious council member we previously saw using Aeon's glyph magic, are completely unaware of the village and its residents. Conversely, Azer is fully aware of New Gravehold, and not in a good way. The establishment of New Gravehold came with the erection of farms, walls, and outposts, not to mention a huge influx of breach magic, all things which upset the gentle balance of the Nameless and their territories. Among other things, it drove a Nameless, the Burning Core, towards the southern forest, which nearly burned away Azer's entire foraging grounds in its fiery inferno. Fortunately, the mages of Azer were strong enough to slay this foe, but they looked upon the citizens of New Gravehold with apathy and resentment ever since, hence their lack of reaching out. Okay, I believe that covers everything there is to know about Azer and its mages. But before I move on to the main campaign, there is a couple of other interesting stuff to reveal first.
Gotta get back. Back to the past.
Back to the city of Old Gravehold, mere hours after the fall. Here we find two additional survivors. I could simply tell you who they are, but let's make things a bit more interesting. I present to you Round 1 of Survivors Bingo. Take a gander, take a guess. Whose status should we reassess? And victory goes to Ohat. During the fall, his shadow Uljamor shielded him from the falling debris, but by the time he dug himself out, everyone else was long gone. After spending the next few years lost and alone underground, Ohat eventually found comfort in Uljamor, and the two of them began cooperating as best they could. Kind of like Venom. Some nice character development at last. Now let's just hope Ohat eventually makes it to the surface for others to see it too. As for the second survivor, I'm sorry to say it's not another one of our missing mages. In fact, this person used to just be an ordinary girl named Kerna. During the fall, she had been abandoned after a building fell on her and crushed her legs, causing her to black out. When next she woke, she discovered that she had suddenly gained the ability to telekinetically control rocks, and has used this newfound ability to craft herself a nifty pair of replacement legs. Afterward, much like Ohat, she spent her years wandering the vast network of caves. Additionally, her lore reveals that her connection to the rocks surrounding her made her keenly aware of the cave's creation. They were not naturally formed, no, but rather dug out by a mole like Nameless called the Burrower for who knows how long. Time to move the clock forward a couple of decades, to the journey of Jagar, who you may remember from part 3.5 of the series returned to Old Gravehold in search of artifacts, only to find the city completely flooded. Well, turns out that wasn't all he found. Another Nameless, the Fortress, had taken up residence in the vacant city. And as its name implies, the Fortress was an absolutely colossal monster who used parts of the very city as a shell for its own defense. Fortunately, the expedition team made quick work of this crustaceous foe. Alright, that does it for the bibs and bobs. Let's get started with the main campaign, shall we? Following the destruction of the southern outpost, we follow the traitorous member of the Council of Elders as they flee to the hidden village of Azer, soon to be followed by another mage from New Gravehold. Upon reaching Azer, the traitor removes her hood, revealing herself to be none other than Janna, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise if you saw the end of my last video. As for the second mage, this was Janna's son, Takran, who knew his mother well enough to suspect she was the traitor all along, as well as where she might have run off to. It is now we finally learn the motivation behind Janna's betrayal. What she had tried to accomplish all along was the peaceful siege of New Gravehold, in order to overthrow Brahma's leadership and change it into one less concerned with past traditions and more accepting of future advancements. Among other things, she also blamed Brahma for the events surrounding the followers of Zaxos, as Brahma had exiled them merely by association and without just cause. But we all know how Janna's attempted siege went. Her control over the Necroswarm Nameless failed miserably, to say the least. Were it not for the expedition team from the last campaign, things likely would have ended a lot worse too. Another thing of note is the reason why Janna wore a robe adorned with the symbol of Zaxos. It wasn't due to being a follower of Zaxos. In fact, she despised the man for leading to her husband's death in the fall. The true reason was that for her the symbol had become a banner of sorts, representing all those who wished for the world to change. Several months later, Janna was beginning to enjoy her refuge amongst the peaceful and loving villagers of Azer. Takran, on the other hand, had remained in the Azer purely to try and persuade his mother to return home to New Gravehold. While they were still discussing the consequences amongst themselves, a cry suddenly rang out from the northern side of the village. A Nameless had suddenly begun to attack the settlement without warning. Both Takran and Janna instantly rushed over to intervene, joined by the only two other mages in the village at that time, Ilya and Kel. The Nameless that attacked this time was Experiment 153. Experiment, what an odd name. And it sure looks a lot like a rabbit. Now where have we seen this before? But did you know, prior to Fenrix, Arachnos had used a rabbit as test subject until it was lost to the void when a breach it was unexpectedly closed. Now this might seem like just another minor detail, but who knows what consequences it could have in the future. Always nice when a good foreshadowing pays off, now isn't it? Anyways, our group of 4 mages soon managed to defeat what is hopefully the last of Arachnos' unholy experiments. As the bloodied Nameless falls to the ground, Takran lifts his hands in the air and lets out a mighty victory cry. Only he celebrated a bit too soon. The rabbit's eyes flare open once more as it makes an enraged charge towards the unsuspecting mage. Janna tries her best to run over to shield her son, but she is too far away. All hope appeared lost when a dark crack suddenly appeared in the sky. No, wait, it can't be. It's a cliffhanger.